I was standing in my walk-in closet, holding the silk scarf Richard had given me for our 24th anniversary, when my phone buzzed with a text from my assistant. "Mrs. Hartwell, you might want to see this. I'm at the Magnolia Room. Your husband is here. With someone." The attached photo showed Richard, my husband of 25 years, leaning across a candlelit table toward a woman I recognized as Victoria Chen, the interior designer he'd been working with on a client's project. Their hands were intertwined on the white tablecloth. Tomorrow was our anniversary, our silver anniversary. I'd spent 3 months planning a surprise European river cruise, the one Richard had always talked about taking when we finally had time. I'd retired from my real estate development company 6 months ago, specifically so we could have that time. I set down the scarf and picked up my car keys. The Magnolia Room was only 15 minutes from our historic home in Charleston's French Quarter, the one I'd bought as a gutted wreck 30 years ago and spent 2 years restoring while Richard was still establishing his architecture firm. I'd handled every contractor, every permit, every design decision, while also running my business. Richard said he was too busy with work to help. Now the house was worth $4 million, and I loved every inch of it. I parked across the street and sat in my car for a moment, watching through the restaurant's tall windows. Richard was laughing at something Victoria said, his head thrown back in a way I hadn't seen in years. She was younger than me, maybe 45, with sleek black hair and a figure shown off by a dress that cost more than most people's monthly rent. I wondered if Richard had paid for it. With what money? I thought. His firm had been struggling for the last 5 years. I'd quietly invested $300,000 to keep it afloat, becoming a silent partner he conveniently forgot about when talking to friends about his success. I walked into the restaurant. The hostess started to greet me, but I walked past her toward their table in the corner. Richard saw me when I was about 10 feet away. His face went pale, then red. "Eleanor," he said, standing up so quickly his napkin fell to the floor. "What are you doing here?" "It's a public restaurant, Richard. Am I not allowed?" I turned to Victoria, extending my hand with a smile. "I'm Eleanor Hartwell, Richard's wife, and you must be Victoria Chen. I've heard so much about your work." She shook my hand limply, her eyes darting to Richard. "Mrs. Hartwell, this is just a business dinner." "On a Friday night? How dedicated." I pulled out the third chair at their table and sat down. "Don't let me interrupt. Richard, you were saying something funny." Victoria looked delighted. "Eleanor, we should talk. Privately." Richard's jaw was tight. "Why? I thought this was just business." I picked up the wine list they'd been sharing. Chateau Margaux 2015. Expensive choice for a business dinner. That's $400 a bottle. Richard grabbed my wrist. "Let's go outside." I looked down at his hand on my wrist, then back up at his face. "Remove your hand." He did, immediately. Whatever he saw in my eyes made him step back. "We'll talk," I said, standing. "Tomorrow, at home. After all, tomorrow is our anniversary. I'm sure you remembered." His face told me he hadn't. I walked out without looking back, but I heard Victoria's whispered Richard, "What the hell?" before the door closed behind me. I didn't cry. I'd built a $50 million real estate empire from nothing. I'd negotiated with banks, contractors, and city councils. I'd survived the 2008 financial crisis. I could survive this. At home, I went to my office and opened my safe. Inside were all the documents that suddenly mattered. The deed to our house, solely in my name. The partnership papers for Richard's firm showing my 35% stake. The titles to both our cars. The investment accounts. The retirement funds. All in my name because I'd earned them. Richard had signed a post-nuptial agreement 10 years ago when I'd helped him out of his first financial crisis. He'd been so grateful then. I'd given him everything. I'd funded his dreams. And he'd given me, what? A scarf? My phone rang at 11 that night. Richard. "Eleanor, I'm staying at the club tonight. We need some space." "The club your membership dues I've been paying for 15 years? Silence. "Come home tomorrow at 2, I said. "We'll talk then." I hung up before he could respond. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at my desk and made a list. Not an emotional list, a business list. Assets, liabilities, exposure, risk. By dawn, I knew exactly what I was going to do. At 8 in the morning, I called my attorney, Marcus Webb. We'd worked together for 20 years. Marcus, I need you to prepare divorce papers. I want them ready by Monday. Eleanor? Is everything all right? No, but it will be. Can you meet me at 10? Of course. At 9, I called my financial advisor. Janet, I need you to do something for me. I need you to call in my loan to Hartwell Architecture. I'm exercising my option to convert it to equity. I want majority ownership. Eleanor. That will essentially force Richard to. I know what it will do. I'm also pulling my investment recommendations. Any clients I referred to Richard's firm should know I'm no longer associated with it. Understood. At 9:30, I called the property management company that handled my rental properties. I need you to issue a 30-day notice to Constance Hartwell. She's been living in my Charleston Street property rent-free. That arrangement is ending. The property manager hesitated. That's Richard's mother, isn't it? Yes, and it's my property. At 10, I was in Marcus's office reviewing divorce papers when my phone started ringing. Richard, then his sister Patricia, then his mother. I silenced all of them. Marcus looked at me over his reading glasses. Are you sure about this, Eleanor? This is comprehensive. I've spent 25 years being generous, Marcus. Being the understanding wife. The one who pays and doesn't complain. I'm done. Richard arrived at exactly 2. I was sitting in the living room, the divorce papers on the coffee table in front of me. He looked terrible. His shirt was wrinkled, his eyes bloodshot. Eleanor, can we please talk about this? Can we work through it? Work through what, Richard? Your affair? Or the fact that your entire family knew about it? His face went white. How did you— Your mother called me this morning, screaming about the eviction notice. She said, and I quote, "You can't punish us just because Richard finally found someone who appreciates him." Apparently, Victoria has been around for 6 months. Your sister knew. Your brother knew. Everyone knew except the fool paying for everything. Eleanor, I was going to tell you. When? Tomorrow? At our anniversary dinner? Were you planning to bring Victoria? Make it a celebration? He sat down heavily in the chair across from me. It just happened. She understood me. She appreciated my work in a way you never did. I invested $300,000 in your firm, Richard. That was business. Everything with us was business, apparently. Do you know what Victoria does for a living? She's an interior designer. She's brilliant. She's a gold digger who saw a foolish man with a successful wife. Let me tell you what's going to happen. I've called in my loan to your firm. I'm converting it to equity. I now own 60% of Hartwell Architecture. You'll be working for me. Effectively. You can't do that. It's in the contract you signed. I'm also pulling my client referrals. Half your current projects came through my connections. I've already made the calls. They're terminating their contracts. Richard stood up, his hands shaking. You're destroying my life. No, I'm taking back what's mine. You destroyed your own life. What about my mother? Patricia's kids? They depend on us. They depend on me, you mean? Your mother has been living rent-free in a property I own. That ends in 30 days. Patricia's children's college fund? I was contributing $10,000 a year. That stops today. Your brother's investment in your firm? That was my money too. He'll need to find another way to fund his retirement. Richard's phone buzzed. He looked at it and his face went even paler. Victoria just texted. She heard about the firm. She says we need to talk. Let me guess. She's reconsidering her appreciation of your work? Eleanor, please. I made a mistake. I see that now. But you're being vindictive. You're hurting people who had nothing to do with this. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the garden I'd planted, the fountain I'd restored, the life I'd built. They had everything to do with it. Richard, your mother has spent 25 years telling you that you could do better, that I was too ambitious, too cold, too focused on business. Your sister has been jealous since the day we met because her husband couldn't provide the life you and I had. Your brother borrowed money for his failed restaurant and never paid it back. You've all been living off me, and the moment you thought you'd found someone else to fund your lifestyle, you threw me away. That's not true. I turned to face him. Richard, you didn't even remember our anniversary. He opened his mouth to argue, then closed it. Sign the papers, I said. My attorney has them. You'll get what the postnup stipulates, $50,000, and whatever personal belongings you brought into the marriage. That's more than fair, considering you brought debt and I'm leaving with everything I built. What am I supposed to do? I don't know, Richard. Maybe Victoria can help you figure that out. Oh wait, she can't, because she was only interested in the successful architect with the rich wife, not the broke one who's about to be working out of a strip mall office. He left without signing the papers, but I knew he would. He had no choice. Over the next 2 weeks, everything fell apart for Richard exactly as I'd planned. His firm lost 4 major clients. His business partner, finding out about my majority stake, resigned and took half the remaining staff. The bank, seeing the instability, called in other loans. Richard had to let go of the rest of his employees. His mother called me 17 times. I didn't answer. She sent letters. I returned them unopened. Patricia showed up at my door with her 2 college-age children, crying about their tuition. I closed the door in her face. I wasn't cruel. I was just done being used. The social fallout was immediate. Charleston high society is small, and everyone knew everyone's business. The story spread quickly. Richard Hartwell had an affair, and his wife had cut him off completely. I was invited to 3 charity galas in 1 week, while Richard was quietly removed from the guest lists. People chose sides, and most chose mine. I had the connections. I had the money. I had the power. Richard moved in with Victoria. That lasted 3 weeks. She left him when she realized he truly had nothing to offer her anymore. He tried to get a job at other architecture firms, but I knew every major developer in Charleston. Every time his name came up, I made a phone call. Not to blacklist him, exactly. Just to share the truth, that he was unreliable, that he'd let personal problems affect his professional judgment, that he'd abandoned his wife of 25 years. No one wanted the liability. 2 months after I'd filed for divorce, Richard's mother had a stroke. Not a major one, but enough that she needed care. Patricia couldn't afford to take her in. Their brother was dealing with his own bankruptcy. Richard couldn't help. He was living in a studio apartment, barely making rent doing freelance drafting work. His mother called me from the hospital, not to apologize, to demand I pay for her care. You have the money, Eleanor. Are you really going to let an 85-year-old woman suffer because you're angry at my son? Constance, you called me a gold digger at your 60th birthday party. You said I trapped Richard, that he would have been better off with a proper wife. You knew about Victoria for 6 months and said nothing. You told him I didn't appreciate him. So no, I'm not going to pay for your care. Your son can figure it out, or Patricia. Or you can apply for Medicaid like millions of other Americans. I hung up. She never called again. The divorce was finalized in December, 3 weeks before Christmas. Richard got his $50,000 and his clothes. I got everything else. On what would have been our 26th anniversary, I was on that European river cruise, but I went alone. I met a lovely retired couple from Portland, and we shared a bottle of wine on the deck as we sailed past castles in Germany. I was happy. Not the way I'd imagined being happy, but happy nonetheless. I returned to Charleston in January. The house felt different, lighter. I'd redecorated Richard's office, turning it into a library. I'd replaced all our wedding photos with pictures of my travels, my friends, my achievements. I'd erased him from my space, and it felt like breathing. One afternoon, I was having coffee at a cafe downtown when I saw him. Richard was thinner, his hair grayer, his clothes cheaper. He was with a woman, but not Victoria. Someone else. Someone plain and nervous-looking. They were arguing in low voices over a menu, clearly worried about the cost. He looked up and saw me. For a moment, our eyes met. I saw it all there: regret, shame, anger, defeat. I smiled at him. Not a cruel smile, but not a kind one either. Just an acknowledgement. I see you. I see what you've become. I see what you lost. Then I turned back to my coffee and my book, and I didn't look his way again. My phone buzzed. A text from my assistant. Mrs. Hartwell, the publisher wants to schedule a call about your memoir. They're very interested. I'd started writing it 3 months ago. From nothing to everything. A woman's journey in real estate. It wasn't about Richard, not really. It was about building something from nothing. About resilience. About knowing your worth. But there was a chapter in there about the cost of generosity without boundaries, about what happens when you give and give and give, and people take and take and take, and then blame you for stopping. That chapter was about Richard and his family, and every person who'd used me while calling me cold. It would be published in the fall. I'd already scheduled the book tour. 3 months later, I heard through mutual acquaintances that Richard was dating someone seriously, a schoolteacher, divorced with 2 kids, modest home in the suburbs. She didn't have money, but she was kind, they said. Patient, understanding. I hoped that was true. I hoped he'd learned something. I hoped he appreciated her in a way he'd never appreciated me. But I didn't wonder about it for long. I had a life to live, a book to write, trips to take. I'd spent 25 years being Mrs. Richard Hartwell, the generous wife, the silent partner, the ATM machine with emotions they all ignored. Now I was just Eleanor. And Eleanor was doing just fine. I was sitting in my garden one evening, watching the sunset paint the sky orange and pink, when Patricia's son showed up at my door. James, 21, college dropout since I'd stopped paying his tuition. Mrs. Hartwell? He stood awkwardly on my porch, hands in his pockets. Can I talk to you? I gestured to the chair across from me. You can try. He sat, looking at his feet. I wanted to apologize. I know my mom and grandma, they said things. About you. They were wrong. I didn't understand until I got older, but Dad and I talked, and I get it now. You didn't owe us anything. You were generous, and we took advantage. I took advantage. I'm sorry. I studied him. He looked sincere, young, scared. What do you want, James? Nothing. I mean, I'm not here to ask for money or anything. I just wanted you to know that not everyone in the family is like they were. I got a job. I'm going to community college at night, paying my own way. I'm trying to do better. That's commendable. My Uncle Richard, he's not doing well. I don't know if you know. I don't keep track. He misses you. I know he doesn't deserve to, but he does. He told me once that he'd thrown away the best thing in his life for a fantasy, that you were the only person who'd ever really believed in him, and he'd betrayed that. I didn't respond. What was there to say? James stood up. Anyway, I just wanted to say I'm sorry, and thank you. For all those years you helped my family. We didn't deserve it, but you gave it anyway. That says something about you. After he left, I sat in my garden until the stars came out. I thought about Richard, about Victoria, about all of it. I thought about whether I was cruel or just fair, whether my revenge had been justice or vindictiveness. In the end, I decided it didn't matter. I'd spent my whole adult life trying to be good, to be generous, to be the bigger person. And where had it gotten me? Used and betrayed. Now I was choosing myself. And if that made me cold, so be it. Cold women survive. Cold women thrive. Cold women don't spend their retirement years crying over men who never appreciated them. The next morning, I called James and offered to meet him for coffee, not to reconcile with the family, not to help Richard, but because he'd done something none of them had done in a year. He'd apologized. He'd taken responsibility. I'm not going to pay for your college, I told him over lattes at the cafe, and I'm not reconciling with your mother or grandmother. I understand. But if you keep going, keep working, keep trying, I'll write you a recommendation letter for any scholarships you apply for. I still have connections. His eyes filled with tears. Mrs. Hartwell, I don't know what to say. Say thank you, and mean it. And James? Learn from your uncle's mistakes. When someone gives you something, appreciate it, and never, ever take it for granted. I won't, I promise. I believed him. Maybe I was a fool for that too, but I decided that I could be selective about my generosity now. I could choose who deserved it. Richard didn't make the list. Neither did his mother or his sister. But maybe his nephew did. Maybe there was still one person in that family worth saving. As for Richard, I heard he eventually married the schoolteacher. They lived in her small house, and he worked a steady job at a firm in North Charleston, making a fraction of what he used to make. No more country club. No more expensive dinners. No more dreams of European rivers and architectural masterpieces. Just an ordinary life with an ordinary woman who didn't have millions to give him. I wondered sometimes if he was happy, if he'd found whatever it was Victoria had promised him, if the grass had been greener, but I didn't wonder long. I had my own life to live, and it was extraordinary.